August 8, 1944, near Saintes, south of Caen, Normandy, France. The leather of his commander's gloves creaked as Hauptmann Michael Wittmann gripped the cupola of Tiger 007, scanning the hedgerow-lined horizon through his Zeiss binoculars. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from a revelation that had been building since dawn. They keep coming. Mother of God, they never stop coming. For 3 hours, his company of 4 Tiger tanks had destroyed Sherman after Sherman. 27 burning hulks littered the fields around the Conflans road. Each Tiger had claimed at least 6 kills. By every measure of tactical combat he'd learned at the Panzertruppenschule, they were winning decisively. The exchange ratio was magnificent, nearly 7-to-1. Yet through his binoculars, Wittmann counted 48 more Shermans advancing from 3 different directions. Fresh units, unblooded crews, full ammunition racks. Behind them, columns of dust suggested dozens more approaching. His 4 Tigers had perhaps 12 rounds of armor-piercing ammunition left between them. No fuel for major maneuvers. No reserves coming. The mathematics of annihilation were being written not in individual tank battles, but in production statistics that rendered tactical brilliance irrelevant. What Wittmann was witnessing, what every German tank commander would witness across every front, was not a battle, but a demonstration of industrial arithmetic that would crush the Wehrmacht beneath sheer mass. He keyed his radio, voice steady despite the certainty of what was coming. His gunner, Balthasar Voll, looked up from his sight, reading the commander's expression. The loader, Heinrich Reimers, stopped mid-motion, a 88mm round suspended in his hands. They all knew you could destroy 10 enemy tanks, 20, 50. It didn't matter. For every Sherman burning in the hedgerows, 2 more rolled off assembly lines in Detroit, Pittsburgh, Chicago. For every Tiger lost, Germany needed 6 weeks, 300,000 man-hours, and resources it no longer possessed to build a replacement. Wittmann had killed 138 enemy tanks in his career. He was Germany's greatest armor ace, and in this moment, staring at an endless tide of American steel, he understood with perfect clarity that individual excellence meant nothing against industrial supremacy. Before we continue, click that subscribe button, like this video, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It brings me great joy, knowing that these war stories and lessons get to people all over the world. Your support helps us bring more thrilling war stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's get back to the story. Within minutes, Michael Wittmann would be dead, his legendary Tiger destroyed by either a Sherman Firefly of the 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry or Canadian Forces. Historians still debate which, but his final radio transmission, logged at 12:47 hours, would capture the despair of every German tanker who faced American production. Munition erschöpft, Gegner unbegrenzt, Ammunition exhausted, enemy unlimited. 8 words that announced not just the end of one battle, but the collapse of Germany's entire armor doctrine. Quality could not defeat quantity. Craftsmanship could not overcome mass production. Tactical genius could not survive industrial arithmetic. The Tiger had dominated every duel. But the Sherman had already won the war. The story of Germany's mathematical defeat began not on a battlefield, but in a moment of technological seduction. May 26, 1941. Berghof, Hitler's mountain retreat in the Bavarian Alps. Ferdinand Porsche and Henschel und Sohn presented their prototypes for what would become the Tiger tank. Hitler circled the massive machine like a predator examining prey, except he was the one being consumed. The 88mm gun, the impenetrable armor, the sheer brutal presence of 57 tons of German engineering. This tank, Hitler declared to his assembled generals, will be worth a battalion of ordinary tanks. One Tiger will destroy a dozen enemy vehicles. It was a prophet's proclamation from a man who understood spectacle but not logistics, who worshipped engineering excellence but dismissed industrial capacity, who believed that German craftsmanship was itself a weapon that could overcome mere numbers. The Führerbefehl that followed condemned German armor doctrine to defeat before a single Tiger fired its gun. Quality would triumph over quantity. The first Tiger rolled off the production line at Henschel's Castle factory on August 4, 1942. It had taken 300,000 man-hours to complete, 300,000 hours for a single tank. The workers had installed 26,000 individual parts, each one requiring inspection, fitting, adjustment. Master craftsmen spent days hand-fitting the transmission, a mechanical labyrinth so complex that only experienced machinists could assemble it. Skilled welders worked for weeks on the armor plates, ensuring perfect seams that could withstand any shell. The interleaved wheel system, a marvel of engineering that distributed the massive weight, demanded precision assembly that only Germany's most experienced workers could accomplish. Oberst Wolfgang Thomale, watching the first Tiger's trials at Kummersdorf, wrote in his report with absolute confidence, "This machine represents the pinnacle of German engineering. No enemy can stand against it. If we can produce 100 per month, the war is won." Germany would never produce 100 Tigers in any month. The highest monthly production ever achieved, April 1944, after 2 years of desperate optimization, was 104 tanks. 1 month. 1 time. Then production collapsed as Allied bombing intensified and skilled labor evaporated into infantry replacements for the Eastern Front. The Tiger demanded what Germany no longer possessed: time, resources, and craftsmen. Each tank required 450,000 man-hours at peak complexity. Specialized tools numbered in the hundreds. Training for mechanics took months. A single damaged final drive meant weeks of repairs or complete replacement. But in early 1943, none of this mattered yet, because the Tiger was dominant. At Leningrad, a single Tiger destroyed 22 Soviet tanks without taking a hit. In Tunisia, Tigers massacred Allied armor at Kasserine Pass. Every engagement proved Hitler's prophecy. 1 Tiger could destroy a dozen enemy vehicles. German tank crews became intoxicated by invincibility. Propaganda films showed Tigers crushing obstacles, shrugging off shells, annihilating enemy formations. Goebbels proclaimed them wonder weapons. Commanders drafted tactics assuming Tiger superiority. The early victories bred a fatal overconfidence that blinded Germany to the mathematical reality already forming across the Atlantic. While German craftsmen hand-built masterpieces, American factories were preparing to drown them in mass-produced steel. While Germany worshipped at the altar of engineering perfection, America was inventing a different kind of weapon entirely. May 28, 1940. The telephone call that would doom the Wehrmacht. William Knudsen, former president of General Motors, the man who had revolutionized automobile production, picked up the receiver to hear President Roosevelt's voice. "Bill, I want you to come to Washington. We need to build 50,000 planes and 50 Sherman tanks." Knudsen's response became the philosophical foundation for American victory. "Mr. President, we can't build the best planes and tanks, but we can build the most planes and tanks, and we can build them so any kid from Iowa can fix them with a wrench and a screwdriver." Not the best, the most. 3 words that would bury German armor beneath an avalanche of steel. At Aberdeen Proving Ground on August 31, 1940, Army Ordnance presented requirements that made traditional military engineers recoil in horror, but made Detroit production experts lean forward with excitement. Simple enough for inexperienced workers to build. Parts interchangeable between all variants. Engines running on multiple fuel types. Armor plates welded, not precision-fitted. Tracks replaceable in field conditions. A turret ring wide enough for future upgrades. Major General Gladian Barnes told the assembled contractors exactly what America needed. "I don't want a perfect tank. I want a good enough tank that we can build 1,000 of for every 100 the Germans build. Make it reliable, make it fixable, and make it by the tens of thousands." The Sherman emerged from this ruthlessly pragmatic philosophy. A tank designed not for individual superiority, but for overwhelming numerical dominance. On September 15, 1941, Chrysler's Detroit Tank Arsenal opened its doors. The facility covered 1.25 million square feet, larger than every German tank factory combined. Instead of master craftsmen, the workforce consisted of former automobile workers, housewives, teenagers, farmers, anyone who could operate a riveting gun or welding torch after 2 days of training. Rose Will Monroe, the woman who became Rosie the Riveter, described the transformation. "I'd never seen a tank before I started building them. They gave us 2 days of training, then put us on the line. Everything was broken down into simple steps. I'd weld one seam, the tank would move, someone else would weld the next. We finished a tank in 4 hours. 4 hours, not 300,000 man-hours. 4 hours. Chrysler engineers had achieved the impossible: assembly line production of armored vehicles. Adapting techniques from automobile manufacturing, they broke the Sherman into modular components. Subassemblies built on parallel lines, then brought together for final assembly. Raw steel to completed tank, 48 hours. By December 1942, 11 factories across America and Canada were producing Shermans: Detroit, Grand Blanc, Lima, Pittsburgh, Chicago, Montreal. The Detroit Tank Arsenal alone produced 896 Shermans per month, more tanks than German intelligence believed physically possible. Total American monthly production, 3,500 Shermans. German monthly Tiger production, same period, 34 tanks. The ratio was 103:1 and widening every day. General Major Heinz Guderian received these figures through intelligence reports in January 1943. His diary entry captured the horror of recognition. "If these numbers are even half true, we have already lost the war." He was right. While Germany crafted 1,047 Tigers over the entire war, America would reveal 49,234 Shermans, a mechanical tsunami that would drown German armor beneath sheer, unstoppable mass. The philosophical collision between German perfection and American production revealed itself not in grand battles, but in the brutal arithmetic of replacement, repair, and readiness. June 1944, Normandy. A Sherman takes an 88mm round through the turret. Crew bails out. 3 survive. The tank burns. 48 hours later, a replacement Sherman arrives from Cherbourg. Fresh crew, full ammunition, combat ready. The destroyed Sherman's surviving crew receives another tank within the week. They're back in action. Same week, same hedgerows. A Tiger throws a track on the interleaved wheel system. A common failure given the design's complexity. Repair time with proper tools and parts, 3 days. Actual repair time without specialized equipment, 11 days. The Tiger sits immobilized, vulnerable, useless. When it finally moves again, it's assigned to a different crew. The original crew has been reassigned to a Panzer IV because there are no replacement Tigers available. There won't be. Tiger replacement time from factory to front, 6 to 12 weeks, if the factory still exists, if the rail lines aren't bombed, if skilled workers haven't been conscripted, if materials arrive, if. The logistics disparity multiplied every disadvantage. The Red Ball Express, America's supply convoy system, delivered 12,500 tons of supplies daily to Allied forces. Fuel, ammunition, spare parts. Entire replacement tanks rolled forward on an unbroken industrial conveyor belt stretching back to untouched American factories. Meanwhile, German forces starved. By August 1944, Wehrmacht fuel allocations had collapsed to 30% of minimum operational requirements. Tigers, consuming 2 gallons per mile, became immobilized pillboxes. Crews abandoned mechanically sound tanks simply because there was no fuel to move them. Lieutenant Otto Carius, Tiger Ace, later wrote with bitter precision, "We weren't defeated by enemy tanks. We were defeated by empty fuel cans." The training gap became catastrophic. At Fort Knox, Kentucky, American tank crews trained on actual Shermans for 12 weeks. Hundreds of tanks dedicated solely to instruction. Crews fired thousands of rounds, drove hundreds of miles, performed maintenance until they could replace any component blindfolded. Private First Class Clarence Smoyer recalled, "We beat the hell out of those training tanks, drove them till they broke, fixed them, drove them again. By the time we shipped out, I knew that tank better than my family's farm tractor." In Germany, the Panzertruppenschule at Putlos had 4 Tigers for training, 4 tanks to prepare crews for every Tiger unit in the Wehrmacht. Gefreiter Kurt Knispel, assigned to Schwere Panzerabteilung 503, described the reality. "We had 3 days in an actual Tiger. 3 days. We spent most of our training studying diagrams and sitting in wooden mock-ups. When we finally received our company Tigers in Russia, half the crew had never started a Maybach engine." The operational readiness statistics told the final story. American Sherman units, 90% combat ready on average. German Tiger units, 35% combat ready on average. For every 10 Tigers produced, only 3 or 4 were actually fighting at any given moment. The rest sat broken, unfueled, awaiting parts that would never arrive, or abandoned on roadsides as crews retreated on foot. America's good enough tank was available, fueled, crewed, and fighting. Germany's perfect tank was a maintenance nightmare, rotting in fields across Europe. Quality had met quantity, and quantity was winning. By 1944, the real battlefield wasn't in Normandy or the Ardennes. It was in the factories, and on that front, Germany had already surrendered. February 20th, 1944. The U.S. 8th Air Force launched Operation Argument, Big Week, targeting German aircraft and tank production facilities. Over 6 days, 3,800 American bombers dropped 10,000 tons of explosives on manufacturing centers. Henschel's Castle plant, producer of Tigers, took direct hits. Production lines shattered, precision machinery buried under rubble, skilled workers killed or scattered. When production resumed weeks later, output had collapsed by 40%. The bombing never stopped. Every month brought new raids. Every raid meant weeks of lost production, destroyed tooling, dead craftsmen whose skills couldn't be replaced. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the Detroit tank arsenal operated under conditions German engineers couldn't fathom. Absolute safety, no bombs, no air raid sirens, no nights spent in shelters. Just 3 shifts, 8 hours each, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, producing Shermans in a rhythm as reliable as a heartbeat. Rose Will Monroe worked the night shift without fear. Her biggest concern wasn't surviving the shift, it was meeting production quotas. When machinery broke, replacement parts arrived within hours, from warehouses overflowing with inventory. The contrast was mathematical annihilation disguised as industrial policy. American supply depots overflowed with spare parts, transmission assemblies stacked like cordwood, entire replacement engines warehoused by the thousands, track links, road wheels, gun barrels, everything stockpiled in quantities that made scarcity impossible. A Sherman's final drive breaks, replace it in 3 hours. Engine failure? Swap in a new one by morning. Damaged gun barrel? 10 replacements waiting at the depot. In Germany, mechanics became scavengers. Obergefreiter Hans Becker, maintenance crew for Schwere Panzerabteilung 502, described the desperation. We cannibalized 3 Tigers to keep one running. Took the transmission from Tank 231, final drives from 217, the optics from 244. By March 1945, our operational Tigers were Frankenstein machines, pieces of 5 different tanks held together by welds and prayers. Spare parts didn't exist. They were myths, fairy tales mechanics told each other about the early war when supply chains still functioned. Tigers sat immobilized, not from battle damage, but from broken components that couldn't be replaced. Crews stripped abandoned tanks like vultures, fighting over salvageable parts. But perhaps the cruelest weapon was psychological. Allied intelligence developed a simple, devastating tactic: show captured German tankers the reserve pools. Lieutenant Friedrich Lang, captured at Falaise, later described his interrogation. They didn't torture us. They drove us past a depot outside Cherbourg, rows of Shermans stretching to the horizon. I counted over 500 before I stopped counting. The American officer said, "This is one depot. We have 17 like it in France alone." Lang sat silent in the truck, doing mathematics he wished he could unlearn. His entire panzer division had begun the Normandy campaign with 42 tanks. This single American depot held more reserves than the entire Western Front had Tigers. The interrogator's final question: how many Tigers does Germany have in reserve? Lang knew the answer. Every German tanker knew. None. Industry itself had become the ultimate weapon, and Germany had brought precision tools to a factory war. December 1944, the Ardennes. Germany launched its final desperate gamble, Operation Wacht am Rhein, later known as the Battle of the Bulge. Among the assault forces, King Tigers, the ultimate evolution of German armor philosophy. 70 tons, 88mm gun that could penetrate any Allied tank at 2,000 meters. Frontal armor impervious to every weapon in the Allied arsenal. They were magnificent, and they failed. Not because they lost duels. King Tigers destroyed every Sherman they encountered. They failed because they couldn't reach the battlefield. The new behemoths consumed fuel so voraciously that most ran dry within 50 kilometers of their starting positions. Crews abandoned mechanically perfect tanks on roadsides, walking back to German lines past the very objectives they were supposed to capture. Obersturmführer Otto Skorzeny, commanding the Panzer Brigade 150, watched King Tigers become monuments to German engineering excess. We built tanks that could win any battle, but couldn't drive to the battle. What good is invincibility if you're sitting motionless, waiting for fuel that will never come? The Bulge offensive collapsed, not from tactical defeat, but from logistical starvation. Germany's perfect tanks sat frozen across Belgium. Not destroyed, simply immobile. March 6, 1945, Cologne. A single Panther tank commanded by Unterscharführer Wilhelm Bartelborth positioned itself at a street intersection as American forces entered the city. For 8 minutes, it was a masterpiece of tactical execution. 11 Shermans destroyed. The Panther's 75mm gun punched through Sherman armor with methodical precision. Each shot, a kill. The cramped urban terrain prevented American numerical advantage from overwhelming the lone German tank. Then a single Sherman Pershing, America's answer to heavy German armor, maneuvered into position and fired. The Panther erupted in flames. Bartelborth and his crew died instantly. By the next morning, 12 replacement Shermans had arrived in Cologne. The Panther's replacement? It didn't exist. German tank production had effectively ceased. The factories were bombed rubble, the workers dead or conscripted, the materials exhausted. one magnificent last stand immediately erased by American production capacity. The final indignity came in the war's closing weeks. German units, once the masters of armored warfare, began operating captured American equipment. Shermans painted with Balkenkreuz, German cross insignia. Wehrmacht crews learning to start radial engines, navigate American transmissions, load 75mm guns they'd spent years trying to destroy. Hauptmann Becker, commanding a makeshift Kampfgruppe in April 1945, later recalled the humiliation. We had 3 operational Panthers and 5 captured Shermans. The Shermans were more reliable. We used them for logistics because we knew they'd actually start in the morning. Our superior Panthers we saved for combat, when we could find fuel. The inversion was complete. German tankers trusted American engineering more than their own. By April 1945, German Tiger and Panther units existed only on paper. Of the 1,347 Tigers built, perhaps 50 remained operational, most abandoned, not from battle damage, but fuel exhaustion. The final Tiger engagement occurred on April 28, 1945, outside Berlin. A single Tiger destroyed 3 Soviet T-34s before running out of ammunition. The crew set demolition charges and walked away from German engineering's greatest achievement, leaving it to burn in a shell crater. No replacement was coming. No fuel existed to move it. No spare parts remained to repair it. The Tiger had dominated every duel it fought, but there were no duels left. Only the mathematics of industrial annihilation. The statistics documented machines. But inside those machines were men, and their survival rates told a story more devastating than any production figure. Otto Carius sat in his pharmacy in Herscheid, West Germany, 50 years after the war. The man who had destroyed 150-plus enemy tanks, one of Germany's greatest armor aces, chose his words with the precision he'd once used to aim an 88mm CZ gun. We didn't fight Americans. We fought arithmetic. We fought factory output. We fought an enemy that could lose 10 tanks for every one of ours and still win, because they had 10 more behind those and 10 more behind those. We were drowning men, killing sharks one at a time while the ocean kept rising. He paused, staring at hands that had once gripped Tiger controls. Every kill meant nothing. The mathematics were already written. We were dead men operating mobile coffins, just waiting for the equation to balance itself. The human cost of German superiority was written in crew survival rates that bordered on genocidal. Tiger crew survival rate, 25%. 3 out of every 4 men who climbed into a Tiger didn't climb out. Not because the armor failed. Tigers were nearly impenetrable from the front. They died because when a Tiger was finally destroyed, it was catastrophic. Ammunition explosions, fuel fires, turrets blown 30 feet into the air. And because there were no replacements. When a Tiger was lost, crews died inside it or were reassigned to infantry units on the Eastern Front. A death sentence with extra steps. Gefreiter Kurt Knispel, who survived the war as Germany's highest-scoring tank ace, described the psychological toll. Every mission felt like suicide. Not because we feared enemy tanks, we dominated those fights. We feared running out of fuel 50 kilometers from friendly lines. We feared throwing a track with no recovery vehicle available. We feared the mathematics catching up to us. Across the front lines, American tankers faced a different reality entirely. Sherman crew survival rate, 97%, 97%. The Sherman's reputation as a death trap was mythology contradicted by mathematics. Crews survived because the Sherman was designed for survival. Escape hatches, wet ammunition storage, multiple exits. And because losing a Sherman wasn't a tragedy, it was a statistic. Staff Sergeant Lafayette Poole, who would become America's top tank ace, explained the mindset. We didn't need to be heroes. We had replacements, My tank got knocked out 3 times. Each time, we bailed out, got a new Sherman within 48 hours, and went back in. The Germans had to be perfect every time. We just had to be good enough and still be alive tomorrow. Private First Class Clarence Smoyer, who fought from Normandy to the Elbe, put it even more plainly. The Germans had better tanks. We had more tanks, and more crews, and more fuel, and more ammunition. They could kill us 10 times over. We'd still be there on the 11th. That's not courage. That's just math. The ultimate irony, Germany's pursuit of the perfect tank killed its crews at 4 times the rate of America's good enough design. The Tiger was a masterpiece that murdered its operators through scarcity. The Sherman was a mass-produced machine that saved lives through replaceability. German tankers fought knowing every battle might be their last, because replacement tanks didn't exist. American tankers fought knowing they could lose today and fight again tomorrow, because replacement tanks arrived by the hundreds. One philosophy built monuments. The other built an army that came home alive. When the guns finally fell silent in May 1945, the accountants performed the autopsy that generals had been avoiding for years. Tiger tanks built 1942 to 1945. 1,347 Sherman tanks built 1942-1944, 49,234. The ratio was 36.6 to 1. 36 Shermans for every Tiger. 36 chances to lose. 36 crews who could bail out and fight again. 36 replacements rolling off assembly lines while German factories smoldered. No tactics could overcome that arithmetic. No crew skill. No engineering excellence. The numbers were a death sentence written in industrial capacity. And Germany had signed it the moment Hitler ordered perfection over production. Every German advantage became irrelevant under the weight of American mass. The Tiger's 88mm gun could kill a Sherman at 2,000 meters. Meaningless when 12 Shermans attacked from 4 directions simultaneously. Tiger armor impervious to frontal assault? Irrelevant when American doctrine was to flank, swarm, and accept losses that would be replaced by Thursday. Superior German optics and crew training? Negated when operational readiness was 35%, because spare parts didn't exist. The Tiger won every technical specification, and lost the only specification that mattered. How many can you build? General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of Allied Forces, understood what German generals refused to accept. In his post-war reflections, he delivered the verdict that closed the case. We defeated German production, not German tanks. 6 words that contained the entire war's truth. The Allies didn't need to build better tanks, an impossible task given German engineering prowess. They needed to build so many tanks that better became a tactical curiosity rather than a strategic advantage. And they had. While Germany crafted 1,347 Tigers, each one a masterpiece of precision engineering requiring 300,000, 450,000 man-hours, 26,000 parts, and craftsmen who no longer existed, America produced 49,234 Shermans using assembly lines staffed by housewives, teenagers, and farmers with 2 days of training. Germany built tanks like Renaissance sculptors, created marble masterpieces, slowly, carefully, irreplaceably. America built tanks like Henry Ford built automobiles, quickly, efficiently, endlessly. The Tiger became a legend. Stories of its dominance filled military histories. Its kill ratios inspired awe. Veterans spoke of it with respect bordering on terror. But legends don't win wars. Production does. For every Tiger that destroyed 10 Shermans, America built 11 more. For every German ace who achieved tactical brilliance, America trained 50 adequate crews. For every engineering marvel Germany unveiled, America answered with overwhelming, suffocating, inescapable mass. The Tiger was the better tank. The Sherman was the winning tank. And in industrial warfare, that distinction was everything. Michael Whitman's final transmission echoed across history as the epitaph for an entire military philosophy. Munition erschöpft, Gegner unbegrenzt, ammunition exhausted, enemy unlimited. Germany had built masterpieces, 1,347 of them. Each one a testament to engineering excellence, tactical superiority, and the belief that quality would triumph over quantity. America built enough, 49,234 Shermans, each one a testament to industrial capacity, logistical supremacy, and the understanding that in modern warfare, enough becomes its own overwhelming form of excellence. Germany built masterpieces. America built enough. And in industrial warfare, enough wins.